Claire Pearsall also still joining me. She's a former Conservative government advisor in the Home Office. Also going to be joined in a few minutes by Paul Richards, who's a former Labour special advisor, to give their thoughts on opening exchanges at PMQs. That's just started over in the Commons, and we've got, I think it's a question already going, but we're going to talk you through the exchange we get between the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch, see what she decides to question him on. We'll give our thoughts on that. We're also going to be talking to the Ukrainian MP and friend of the show, Kira Ruddick, who I'd like to say will be in the studio about the latest in Ukraine, particularly those audacious attacks by the Ukrainians on Russian jets and indeed on that bridge to Crimea. We're also going to be talking about the usual madness of net zero. And is there a possibility, it looks like it, the Energy Secretary, Net Zero Secretary, whatever he is this week, Ed Miliband, poised to ditch the government's insane targets to fit useless, overpriced heat pumps. That's all coming up. Right now, though, let's go to the House of Commons live to hear PMQs.
The winter fuel policy was set in stone. 2 weeks ago, the Prime Minister U-turned. Today, the Chancellor is rushing her plans because she just realised when winter is. So, on behalf of the pensioners who want to know, can the Prime Minister be clear with us here and now? How many of the 10 million people who lost their winter fuel payments will get it back?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm glad to see she's catching up with what happened 2 weeks ago. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, at the budget, we took the right decision to stabilise the economy because of the £22 billion black hole that they left. And the signs, we took the right decisions. The growth figures are up, the interest rates have been cut, and we got 3 trade deals. So we will look again, as I said 2 weeks ago, at the eligibility for winter fuel, and of course we'll set out how we pay for it. But because we've stabilised the economy, Mr. Speaker, we on this side are committed to the triple lock, and that increased pensions by over £400 this April. On their side, they say the triple lock is unsustainable, and I think her position is she wants to means test it.
No answer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister clearly has selective amnesia. I asked him 3 questions about the winter fuel payments 2 weeks ago, and he was floundering. The fact is, he hasn't answered the question I asked him. He hasn't answered the question I asked him. He can't tell us who will get the payments. All we see is U-turn after U-turn. His head must be spinning. Will he apologise now for taking the payments away in the first place, including to his own backbenchers? And can he tell us how he's going to pay for this?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we took the right decisions at the budget because we needed to stabilise the economy. She needs to apologise for the fact that they left the economy in a terrible state. We had a mini-budget which blew up the economy, and we were left with a £22 billion black hole. When she gets up, perhaps she should apologise for that.
Mr. Speaker, the OBR has said there was no such black hole. He's just given away £30 billion for the Chagos Island. That's his black hole. He hasn't stabilised the economy. Borrowing prices are higher now than any time in the last Parliament. He has not stabilised the economy. He has no clear answers on what he's doing. It's just chaos, chaos, chaos. He keeps making announcements with no detail. So let's move to another area of confusion. Can we get a simple answer? Will the government keep the 2-child benefit cap?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm absolutely determined that we will drive down child poverty. That's one of the proudest things of the last Labour government. That's why we've got a task force. That's why we've got a strategy, and we'll set out that strategy in due course. But we drive child poverty down. Under them, poverty always goes up.
Kemi Badenoch.
I didn't ask him about a task force. I asked him if he will keep the 2-child benefit cap, and he doesn't know. It's just chaos and uncertainty. He has no details. He is briefing something and causing a lot of confusion to the people out there. But on that 2-child benefit cap, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell him this. I believe in family, but I also believe in fairness. Yes. On this side of the House, we believe that people on benefits should have to make the same choices on having children as everyone else. Yes. What does the Prime Minister believe?
Yes. Prime Minister. Speaker, I believe profoundly in driving down poverty and child poverty. That's why we'll put a strategy in place. But she talks about head spinning. There's only one leader, Mr. Speaker, who's been praised this week by the Russian embassy. And if she carries on echoing Kremlin talking points like this, Reform are going to be sending her an application form for membership.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister what he believes in. He had to look in his folder to find the answer. His MPs behind him know what they believe in. He doesn't know.
Keep going.
Mr. Speaker, he has been in government for nearly a year. It's only going to get harder. It's only going to get... Yes. He's been in government only a year. It's only going to get harder and harder. The canned forced laughter, the planted questions, all of this is going to disappear because at every single point, things are getting worse. He has to ask Morgan McSweeney what it is that he believes in, but the fact is that chaos is being felt in the economy. The Chancellor said she would not be coming back with new tax rises, but she will have to pay for all of these U-turns which she's announcing out there, isn't she?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to look in my folder because here I've got the quote that she had on Sky News. I will read it, thank you. It's what the Leader of the Opposition says. It's worth listening to. What she said was this. Sky News, Mr. Speaker, Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the United Kingdom, just like Ukraine is on behalf of Western Europe against Russia. Well, that was certainly noticed in the Russian embassy, because they put out a statement saying the Leader of the Opposition has finally called a spade a spade. Ukraine is indeed fighting a proxy war against Russia on behalf of Western interests. And they went on to say the illegitimate Kyiv regime, created, financed and armed by the West, has been at it since 2014. So they endorsed that. They want the detail. I've given the quote. That's what Russia said in response. She asked me what I believe in. I believe in standing by Ukraine and calling out Russia as the aggressor.
Mr. Speaker, it was our government that stood behind Ukraine and led the way in Europe. Everything he has said this afternoon is total nonsense. Obfuscation, avoiding the question. He doesn't have any answers. It's disgraceful. I asked him, Mr. Speaker, about the two-child benefit cap. He's talking about the Kremlin. He's saying everything he can to distract from the mess he is making of our economy. The OECD has downgraded growth for the next 2 years. He can't rule out tax rises. The police chiefs are saying they don't have the money they need to keep the public safe. Just as he's releasing more criminals onto the streets. His cabinet are squabbling with each other. They've said that they've lost control of the borders, but he still managed, Mr. Speaker, to find £30 billion to give away the Chagos Islands. This is total and utter chaos. 2 weeks ago, he was crowing about his historic trade deal and how he got 0% tariffs on steel. Now the steel industry will face 25% tariffs unless he does exactly what President Trump tells him to. It is chaos, chaos, chaos. And isn't the root of the chaos, Mr. Speaker, that it is about this Prime Minister, his decisions and his judgment?
The only advice, Mr. Speaker, she gets up on a Wednesday morning, scrolls through social media, never does anything. We're the only country in the world that isn't paying the 50% tax on steel. And we're working in the US, and that will be coming down. We are working on it to bring it down to zero. That is going to happen.
Order. Please. Let's listen to the answer, even if you don't believe you're getting one. It is how the Prime Minister wishes to.
What did she opposes the US deal, she opposes the India deal, she opposes what we're doing with the EU, and she opposes Diego Garcia. That's a vital intelligence and strategic capability. Absolutely clear that legal uncertainty would compromise that capability in a very short time. No responsible Prime Minister would ever let that happen. We have secured the long-term basis for the base. That has been welcomed by, Mr. Speaker, welcomed by the US, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, India. They're our allies. It's been opposed by our adversaries, Russia, China and Iran. And into that column we have reform, presumably following Putin, and the Tories following reform.
Right, well, let's come back after that rip-roaring exchange between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. There is no love lost between those two people, is there? Wow. Claire Pearsall still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor, listening to those 6 questions and 6, I mean, let's be honest, non-answers. 'Twas ever thus at PMQs. Also still joining us today on the line is Paul Richards. He's a former Labour Special Advisor. A very good afternoon to you, Paul.
Hello there.
Thank you for joining us. Well, I mean, they both gave it some today, didn't they? I thought that was quite interesting. I think Claire and I had the same reaction at the first question when the Kemi Badenoch asked about the winter fuel allowance. Massive issue, huge cut to issue for voters, affects 10 million pensioners, and asking how many of those 10 million are going who lost winter fuel payments under the last announcement last year, and how many are going to get it back, as has been hinted at by the Prime Minister. And that the Prime Minister gave, Paul, when he said she's catching up, glad to see she's catching up with what happened 2 weeks ago. Quite a big dig. Now, she hit back pointing out, no, I have asked you about this before in the last couple of weeks, but it's interesting, that sort of scathing response from him, but it echoes a lot of criticism that a lot of people have had of Kemi Badenoch's sort of questioning of the Prime Minister, doesn't it?
It does, but I think that she did really well this week, actually. I think she gave as good as she got. And I think that what you saw being played out was 2 sets of scripted, responses, both battling for social media attention, not necessarily sort of debating in a parliamentary style, but actually just...
We didn't learn anything.
No, so chaos from Kemi, and then from Keir, it was all about the black hole, the Liz Truss budget, and then this bizarre thing about Ukraine, which I'm sure we'll come on to, but that sort of came out of nowhere, that he had this quote from Sky News that Kemi had given succor to the Russians. By
saying Israel is fighting a proxy war on behalf of the UK. I mean, and it's just as Ukraine is fighting a proxy war against Russia. I mean, yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, they're defending themselves in Ukraine, but yeah, on behalf of the West. I mean, this has been stated...
clumsy wording from Kemi, which then the Russians leapt upon, and then what Starmer has done is turn that back on her. But she hadn't asked about Ukraine. She was talking about two child benefit cap and talking about winter fuel allowance and so on. So it'll be interesting to see. Of course, Number 10 will now be pumping out that Ukraine line because, as Kemi said, it was just pure distraction, but it actually will now play on social media.
Yeah, and although again, with a certain group of people on social media, but perhaps not for most people who won't query that. Claire Pearsall, as I say, you and I both had that same reaction there. But she was, look, I agree with Paul. I think she had a very, very good PMQs. She came in very hard. He was so blatantly, openly not replying to questions. Now, people say, oh, you never get any answers. I mean, you never do. I used to sit opposite the Prime Minister. My little spot in the press gallery was opposite the Prime Minister, just above it, when I was at the Sunday Express. And it was ever thus. Tony Blair, everyone else onwards. It's been like that. But he is so blatant about it, isn't he? About I'm not answering. Do you think there comes a point when the Speaker, Lindsay Hoyle or any Speaker, needs to actually say to a Prime Minister, sorry, that wasn't an answer to the question you were asked?
But that really isn't the job for the chair to do that, unfortunately. This is a job now for MPs and constituents to write in and go, hold on a second, we want answers.
We get to judge the Prime Minister for failing to answer that question,
absolutely.
For obfuscating. Great parliamentary word, obfuscating.
It is.
Dodging the question.
Dodging the question.
Why doesn't he know how many... Why doesn't he know how many of the 10 million pensioners are going to get it back? Why doesn't he know whether or not he's going to overturn the cap on two-child benefit cap? Why doesn't he know any of these things?
Well, hang on, he does know, doesn't he? But he can't say it out loud in parliamentary questions because there's a spending review coming out next week. So that's why Kemi came on all those areas to make him look weak. And that's right, isn't it, Claire? That's how you would have advised them.
Well, yes, it would. And yes, he did look weak, though, because he hasn't answered. He can't even give a half answer when it comes to it. When you watch the likes of Tony Blair, when you watch the likes of David Cameron, and even some respects Michael Howard, you can not give an answer in a certain way that looks like you're giving an answer.
And they're all sort of loyally. You think, well, that's the thing, coming back to you, Paul, it is the better answer there from the Prime Minister would have been, Look, we're looking into this. We want to help as many people as possible. We've got the spending review. I can't preempt that because we're doing the numbers. We have to be able to afford it, and and his usual claim, the economy has turned a corner. I mean, it absolutely sodding well hasn't, but he can keep claiming that. That's why we're able to give some of that money back. I don't think that's going to pass muster. I don't think, to be honest with you, the people who lost it or people whose family members have lost it are going to forgive them for that. I think they lost a lot of people's support on that. But to say, but we'll hopefully be able to give you that information next week, because a lot of people are saying they're not expecting to have to wait all the way to the autumn budget because politically it won't last that long, will it? But wouldn't that have been a better answer from him?
Well, I think he could have just, hid behind the process and said, you have to wait and see because my honourable friend, the Chancellor, will be making announcements next week and yada, yada. He chose not to, but I think that would have been the stronger answer. It's interesting also, though, we had a massive defence review this week and we've had a load of announcements this morning on transport, and neither of those multi-billion pound announcements even came up in PMQs just now.
Well, they may have come up from some of the questions from MPs, I'm assuming.
Well, the planted questions.
Some planted questions. And that was the point. I mean, and we've had this with every party, have we not? Canned forced laughter, said Kemi Badenoch, and planted questions. We're told there's supposed to be some sort of walkout stage, either late in the afternoon or possibly in PMQs, by sort of pro-Gaza MPs. We've got 5 pretty much official Gaza MPs, have we not?
But they can walk out and stay out, as far as I'm concerned.
Quite.
There is that. But Claire, I mean, is Kemi Badenoch asking the questions that really matter about, again, winter fuel payments very important, but a lot of people, Labour voters too, very much opposed to having that cap on two-child benefit lifted. That's a metropolitan elite sort of charity sort of concern. Actually, your average working class person living in a housing estate next door to somebody who doesn't work and has got 4 kids when they can't afford to have more than 2 kids, frankly, they feel rather differently about it. But is she going down the right line? Is this the line of attack that you think is working?
I think today she has chosen the right line of attack. And yes, there has been all of the defence spending announcements, but there was also a statement in the House of Commons on Monday and hours of debate afterwards. So they've had that. So I think to keep rehashing it would be wrong. The transport numbers, which would be interesting, the spending on transport.
But on defence, of course. Kemi Badenoch doesn't disagree.
No.
And the argument, surely the argument back, Paul, from Labour would be, well, if you're criticising us for not spending enough on defence, A, where would you get the money from? And B, why didn't you spend more when you were in power? So that's one of the issues with the Tories and Labour now is Tories spent years blaming Labour for the mess that the economy was in when they took over. Labour is spending ages and will do for years blaming the Tories. And we don't seem to get anywhere. I know we've got a question. The new Reform MP, Sarah Pouchin, has got a question, and we'll bring that to you if we can get it during our time. But, a lot of voters are going to fall very, very, very bored with, it's all your fault from both sides.
Well, there's only so long you can do that as well, of course, because ultimately governments will be judged on their own performance, which is why I'm surprised. I can understand why Kemi didn't raise defence and transport, but I'm surprised Starmer didn't. I thought he would be in his advantage to echo some of that. Notwithstanding Claire's point about the very long debate they had on defence, but people aren't really paying attention to that in quite the same way as PMQs. Yeah. So I would have, if I was advising, I would say raise these big issues, because the Labour government is spending a lot of money in the north, and you can say that's just to see off reform, or it's genuinely needed for the economy, or whatever the argument is, but it should have been raised.
Yeah. I've got no problem with government spending money to be popular. This in the right areas. We know there's only £15 billion of transport projects announced for largely, not entirely, but largely North and Midlands for some of our major cities. Absolutely vital for people to be able to get to and from work, to start businesses. Transport links outside London are abysmal in this country, and it has a massive impact on productivity, on people's ability to even get a job. Bus links, again, much more absolutely ignored largely by the metropolitan elite down in London, because they all get the tube or cycle to work, and they don't understand how most people have to need a car to get about. And if you haven't got a car, you literally can't go and get a job because you can't get there because there are only 2 buses a day from your village. So these are really important issues. I would have thought more voters will actually be impacted by that announcement today than pretty much anything else discussed at PMQs.
Yeah, you sound like a Labour MP, Julia.
But I do think there's a problem. There's a problem with that, because the announcement was only made this morning. And yes, you're right. We need to make good the transport situation in the north and make those people feel that they're being listened to and they'll be able to get about their lives. But it doesn't impact people immediately, not the way that things like welfare changes or winter fuel allowance
literally less
does.
money in your pocket today.
Exactly. Whereas this is a longer term ambition.
There's no doubt also, Paul, just to come to you finally on this, is that Kemi Badenoch in one of her final questions, I think her final question, talked about, chaos is where we are, the root of that is the Prime Minister's decisions, the Prime Minister's judgment. At the end of the day, Rachel Reeves doesn't make the decisions. He's the First Lord of the Treasury. He gets to have the final say on anything that they do in the budget and the spending review. But also talking about how, you're just 1 year in, it's going to get harder. He's already seeing a lot of support, well, we've seen it in the polls, leeching away. Even among many of his MPs, there's a lot of griping. This is not where you'd expect him to be less than a year into office with that massive majority. I was working in the political journalist in the Commons when Tony Blair was in power at this time. This was nothing like that. Do you see his power and his authority leeching away?
Well, I don't know about that. I think he's having a rocky...
Paul, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to go live to the Commons to hear Sarah Pouchin. Back to you in a moment.
Will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burqa?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Can I welcome her to her place? But I'm not going to follow her down that line. But now she is here and safely in her place, perhaps she could tell her new party leader that his latest plan to bet £80 billion of unfunded tax cuts, there's no idea how he's going to pay for it, is Liz Truss all over again. Although, considering I think she was a Conservative member when Liz Truss was leader, she probably won't.
Well, I mean, interestingly, sorry to interrupt you there, Paul Richards, we actually got an answer from the PM. No, doesn't want to ban the burqa. That came a little bit left field. The reaction in the Commons was quite sort of shocked. But again, I would ban the burqa. Many other countries in the West have done. Interestingly, it's actually been banned. It's actually banned in some Muslim countries, which is absolutely fascinating. But Paul Richards, I mean, just coming back to the answer you were giving in terms of the support that Keir Starmer has right now, it is just dissipating by the hour, isn't it?
Well, there are some polls this week that says he's the most popular choice for Prime Minister. So, I mean, there is a residual support there for him and for the Labour government. But I'm not saying it's not rocky. And if you knock on doors, there's a by-election in the Scottish Parliament, which is coming up imminently where, real opinion will be tested. And that won't be good for the government, I don't think. So, yeah, it's rocky. But I think... as the announcements start to roll out, the trade deals, the interest rates have come down, we're going to see more investment in defence, transport, and the health service, of course. These things do start to change opinion around because no vote in the next election is decided by the last election. There's no loyalty anymore to anything.
Absolutely. Things have changed there. Fascinating. Paul Richards, thank you. Final word to you, Claire?
I think Paul is very, very sensible when it comes to these things.
There you go, Paul. You've got a compliment.
That's the one compliment I'll give. But the rest of it, I think the Prime Minister needs to start answering some questions about where this money is coming from that he is able to spend.
Well, a lot of people are expecting we will be seeing more tax cuts. But, of course, they said they wouldn't raise certain taxes like income tax, national insurance, which then became a national insurance for employees, not employer. That went up. Massive big hike, massive big impact on jobs and also VAT. But doesn't leave very much to hike up. Can't borrow anymore.
Exactly.
Or we're going to have spending cuts in other areas. Absolutely. Again, we're going to be spending a heck of a lot more on defence than they were claiming earlier this week. I'm telling you that for absolute fact right now. It's going to be fascinating.